So what we've seen so far are there are types of relationships between two entities. So when I have two entities, I want to know the relationship between these two entities. Is it a one-to-one relationship? Is it a one-to-many or a many-to-many relationship? Okay, now the relationships can be classified also in different ways, and that classification depends on how many entities are involved in that relationship. So if we have a relationship that only involves an entity itself, just one entity, we say that is a unary relationship or a recursive relationship because it only depends on itself. What does that mean? Let's take an employee, for example. And I want to just go and look at the database that we have loaded. When I look at my employee table, here I have the employee ID, and one of the columns is the manager ID. So I'm storing a reference to my manager. Well, my manager is actually an employee. So each one of these IDs belongs to some employee. And if we look at our employee table contains 200 employees. So the highest employee ID is 200. If we go to the employee table and we say order by manager ID, let's see what's the highest manager ID, and let's order in descending order. So we see the highest one first. We will see that the highest manager ID is 200. So those manager IDs actually correspond to existing employee IDs. So here I am storing a reference to a primary key that exists in my own table. So this is an example of a unary relationship, a relationship that exists between occurrences of the same entity set. And so the primary and foreign keys both refer to the same entity type. They both refer to the employee table. Okay, so here this picture shows the same example where I have an employee is supervised by another employee. So if you just have a relationship that includes only one entity, we say that is a unary relationship because it exists between that entry and itself. Okay. So some examples would be an employee managing another employee, a person married to another person, an inventory item is part of another inventory item. If the relationship contains two entities, then we say that is a binary relationship. And, when we looked at the one-to-many relationships, those contained two entities. And so here, if I have like a student is enrolled in a course, here I have two entities. So we say that is a binary relationship. So in terms of number, we just look at how many relationships are involved. If it's just one relationship, a relationship only involves one entity, the entity refers back to itself, we say that is a unary relationship. If we have two entities that have some kind of relationship between them, we say that is a binary relationship. Okay. So some examples would be an employee is assigned a parking space. So here we have an employee, we have a parking space, and we have two entities, so we say it's a binary relationship. Don't confuse that with the one-to-one relationship. So here an employee is assigned a single parking space. A parking space is assigned to a single employee, but because we decided to create them as two different tables in the database, it would be a binary relationship because we said a one-to-one relationship can be stored as one table where the parking space might be an attribute in the employee table, or we could store it in two separate tables where the employee, we take the employees, we take the parking spaces ID and store it in the employee table. So here we decided that we're going to store them in two separate tables. So now we have two entities, and that is what makes it a binary relationship. If I talk about a teacher teaching a course, here a teacher can teach many courses. So it's a one-to-many relationship, but again, we only have two entities. So the binary relationship just looks at the number of entities involved. It doesn't matter whether it's one-to-one or one-to-many. Okay, here is another example, a student enrolled in a course. This is a many-to-many relationship, but we have two entities that are involved, so you say that is a binary relationship. Now, if you have more than two entities, then we call that, you know, it has a name, but let's talk about three first. If we have three entities, we say that's a ternary relationship. So for example, if I'm talking about a student taking some kind of course with a professor, that here is a ternary relationship because we have three entities. An author is writing a paper and that paper needs to be edited by an editor. Here we have three entities, so it's a ternary relationship. And if it's more than that, we call it an n-ary relationship, like a 4-ary, a 5-ary, a 6-ary, you know, depending on how many entities are involved. So if we think of you going and seeing a doctor, well, a doctor sees a patient, they prescribe a medicine based on some diagnosis. And so here you have many entities involved. And so you would have a 4-way relationship between those 4 entities.